If you're ever at a party and everyone has had a wee bit too much, and you put on one of these songs, particularly this one, and you see people who aren't in fully control of their limbs trying to time their dancing to this, it's hilarious. It's really, really good. And you
Yeah.
usually get at least one faller, if not a couple.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. It's Andy and it's John, and it's time to dig into some music. So, John, you're going to offer up a song for me to go off and give a listen to, but in order to do that, you're going to have to divulge your secret, sir. What have you got?
That band is Gang of Four.
Oh, nice.
We've done one on the channel together, and you did one with Greg as well, I believe.
I
So,
did.
Damaged Goods and was it a Lover Man in Uniform or one of those?
No, I can't even remember the name of that track, if I'm being honest with you, John. It's been
I
years.
should have done my research.
No,
I
it's all
didn't.
good. I remember plenty about this band. One, I like it. One, I know that they're super influential to a lot of the bands that I listen to. And they're definitely interesting in their political views and ideology, which often leaks into the music. So I'll endeavor to see if I can sift through whatever you offer me by them and see if it does the same. But what's the name of the track?
Naturals not in it.
Naturals Not in It. Okay. Interesting worded title. All right. Well, I already have my presuppositions, as I just illustrated with what I know about the band, having listened to them and what I know of them. So let me go off and see if it is applicable to this track. Naturals Not in It. Oh, this is good. Love those choppy, kind of discordant guitar chords that are just, hacking away. And then that beat drops and kind of clears a path for it. And then in struts this really cool, infectious bass line. Good shit. Oh, this is nice. Mm, 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 mm. is verse one again. Wow. That was the quickest 3 minutes and 5 seconds ever. Uh, really interesting stuff. I mean, I know that these guys are super political. Um, I know that they have Marxist leanings, might even be an understatement. And it's interesting because you're listening to the words. I'm trying to, obviously that's my sort of presupposition coming into this is, oh, this is going to be, connected to something um in that vein, right? Something that connects itself to this sort of Marxist ideology. And I think we have that here. Maybe I'm reaching, but it sounds like what they're illustrating from the bits and pieces that I caught were sort of this idea that even our base, most natural pleasures in a certain capitalist kind of society can become commodities or something that can be leveraged for financial gain or gain of power or something like that, which kind of flies in the face of what it is supposed to be. I mean, it's supposed to be this thing that is natural and base, uh, and yet we found a way to let overreaching for power or money work its way or weave its way into it, which is an interesting um, idea or thought, and maybe truth that that they're underscoring here. That's, yeah, really interesting stuff. I mean, the line "repackaged sex keeps your interest," and I just love the idea that that's the line, and yet it's repackaged and provided over and over again, like they deliver it multiple times. Something kind of clever about that. And even maybe the same can be said for how they repackaged the first verse and added it at the end, which is something that John and I talked about recently. The idea of like the first verse bookending songs. Um, so yeah, that's interesting stuff. It's catchy. It's got like I can get into the first 20 or 30 seconds of the song and see how it and the band would go on to influence that early to mid 2000s sort of sleaze indie rock revival, because or just reimagination of it, and it's really indicative of like how influential this sound and these guys were when there are bands that would come along 20-25 years later and really emulate um this sound. And that's for someone who grew up after this, it's and listened to that genre in the early 2000s. It's really cool to get a chance to come back and listen to guys like these, which again, I admit I've listened to them before and I heard it there, but every time I hear songs that came before the genres that I kind of, grew up listening or gravitated to in real time, it's always fun to hear what kind of paved the way or influenced their sounds. So yeah, this definitely checks that box. It's also really interesting subject matter. I don't know if I got 100% of it. Oh, I know I didn't get 100% of it, but I don't know if what I got was 100% correct. I'm sure John can help me along the way. Yeah, really cool stuff. Let's get back to him and chop this one up. Specifically, like the meaning of it and what they're going for, because I know these guys are no strangers to making statements.
Admiral Adama, he's back. So, you've had a listen to Natural's not in it, Gang of Four. So proceed with your report.
Well, it's just yet another song by these guys that I really, really enjoyed. The song from that we did with Greg, that I did with Greg, "To Hell with Poverty," right? That's the
Yeah,
one.
should
Yeah,
have
yeah,
remembered that one.
yeah. No, and it's funny because I was over here talking about how their political leanings became evident to me, and it wasn't just the title, but it was that song and what that song was
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that really illustrated that for me. Um, Yeah, so of course I went through this one kind of with as fine-tooth comb as I could, trying to extrapolate the same sort of mentality that was behind To Hell with Poverty, apply it to this, and even Damaged Goods. So it's like, um, before I get into the song itself, let me just talk about the sound. Because I didn't get maybe 20 or 30 seconds into this, and it was just great. It was this aha moment that I have with a lot of bands that we do. Not all of them, but a lot of these bands where it's like, oh my God, these are so clearly the influencers of the bands that I would fall in love with in the early 2000s. I mean, this particular song and its sound had so much of that indie sleaze rock that was happening in the early 2000s with the guitar, the choppy guitar and everything. That I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, it was like meeting someone it was like having nostalgia meeting someone that you never met before. It was this odd feeling where I'm like I could see all the points where you influenced the bands that I would gravitate to when I was in my 20 early 20s or whatever. So yeah, good shit, and that's always fun. But we get things kicked off with this really punchy, almost discordant guitar chords like chopping away for a couple seconds, and then in comes this really nice beat that kind of clears the path and provides a lane for the music. Um, and wouldn't you know it, we get this stellar, like jaunty bass line that comes strutting over that path. And that's just, that's mother's milk for me. The vocals join kind of mimicking that bass line, kind of like that's the where it draws its melody from, which is really interesting and cool. And we get introduced to this concept or perhaps question of how we define, prioritize, or even monetize pleasure. Now I know I'm already kind of looking at the I'm coming in trying to find, so this is the angle that I'm coming from. If I didn't know anything about this band, I don't know if that's what I would have like sought for, like or looked for, but it's definitely what I'm drawing correlations to. You can tell me how right or wrong I am by the time we get to the end of this. Um, but this the last bit about monetize is particularly underscored by the lines "dream of the perfect life, economic circumstances, the body is good business, sell out, maintain the interest." Like those are some really interesting lines. And the drums cut out around the 1 minute mark, letting the vocals, bass, and guitar shine for about 12 seconds or so. And then the next verse kicks off. And the second verse continues this idea, wrangling with how at this point I'm really it just seems like sex is the thing that they're talking about, and they're wrangling with how sex is intertwined with power in our society, which isn't a natural thing for sex to be related to. It's such a natural base pleasure, and now it becomes this mechanism for leverage, which it isn't supposed to be, and kind of dirties this thing that's supposed to be natural and beautiful in its own right, you know what I mean, or whatever. So that is really an interesting thing that they're kind of illustrating, and I hadn't really thought of before. I mean, of course, I thought of how people use sex for the, but not how it's a thing that's perhaps exclusive to Western capitalist democracies and countries where it's so rampant. So yeah, interesting stuff. I don't. Again, I'm really putting my Marxist cap on when I'm. So after the last lines of the second verse, we all have good intentions, but all with strings attached. That's a great line. The drums cut out again, and the chords continue chopping away at the progression. And then we get this slightly distant group vocal delivery of a very interesting refrain. Repackaged sex keeps your interest. And they repeat it several times, and it's pretty meta when you think about it. This idea of repackaging something because it keeps your interest and keeps you coming back to the well, being delivered on repeat, which in and of itself is a repackaging of the mantra. And I hope that that was intentional because it kind of made me chuckle from like a, like again, like I said, like a meta level. I was like, clever. Uh, the bass comes back in and there's this little twang added to the guitar part just for a moment. It kind of stood out to me. And the song revisits the first verse, a concept that we discussed very recently, this idea of bookending with a repeat of what was lyrically the first verse. And in this case, I think it is to underscore sort of the cyclicality of this conundrum. And again, kind of this repackaging idea where they take it and they're bringing it to you again because it's what we want. Um, and then we get our second and last repeated refrain of the song. Though this one isn't repeated as much as the repackaged sex line, where the singer says three times in a row, the heaven gives me migraine or something like that, but he pronounces it migraine, I think. That's I remember that correctly. Before stopping like on the downbeat. And so given what I know about the band, and this sounds like a pointed jab at a capitalist society so firmly entrenched in its commercial and transactional ways that this ethos has even leaked into simple and base and otherwise natural pleasures like sex. So, on top of it being like interesting from a lyrical standpoint, it was catchy as all hell. So of course I really enjoyed this one, John. I mean, and again, it not only was it catchy, but it really reminded me of the stuff that I gravitated to when I was in my 20s. So I'm like, oh my God, I love this correlation and being able to like see how history influenced what was, my present when I was that age. It's just really, really cool stuff. So getting to do all that sort of math and timeline shit in my head. So yeah, but tell me more about it and how close or far from the presumed meaning I came to hitting the mark on this one.
Yeah, yeah. You're pretty much there. And in terms of like how it delineates is open to interpretation, but the big word is commodification.
Yeah.
That's what
Okay.
they're really on about. So yeah, I'll go on about it in a second, but for my sort of two pence worth on this, um, this is my second favorite Gang Force song. Um, it's just the rhythmic nature of the guitar is just something else. We've done an episode before. I'll put a link in. I'll do a playlist and I'll include the Into the Music ones as well. So we've got a nice little run of them. So there's plenty of information about the band and everything there. But yeah, just so it blew me away. There's a story in the last episode I talked about this weird guy making me promise to go out and buy the record the next day at this party I was at, and I did, and I never looked back because it's just absolutely wonderful. And
Hmm.
that sort of he's taken on Wilco Johnson, and just made it his own. This style, this amazing style that's so rhythmic and angular and scratchy and
Hmm.
funky as well, and dancing. And there's a blog that I read that someone said that they took great pleasure in putting on Gang of Four records at parties and watching people dance to this Marxist stuff. They had no idea what the lyrics were. But so that aside, I just think it's fantastic. Yeah, and it's thoughtful as well. And you know, the issue I have with certain sort of dogmas or philosophies or whatever you want to call them, Marxism being one, is they're usually very good at pointing out what's wrong,
Yeah.
very, very light on the solution, or a solution I can agree with anyway. And you get that nowadays with modern prominent figures in politics. They're very good at pointing out what's wrong, um, or who the problem is, pointing the finger,
But not ever what
but
the
fixing
solution
it.
is. Yeah.
Nah, not a
Yeah.
fucking chance. But anyway, so you can take what you want out of their philosophy, but I mean, I do know that it was earnest and with good intentions. It wasn't cynical, put it that way. So what I'll do is I'll just very briefly recap on the members of the band, and then I've got a couple of articles I dug up that give you an idea of how they were formed and what they were thinking about when they did this song. We'll go into the lyrics and a
Okay.
bit more
That sounds
about it.
good to me.
So just to remind them, it was they were formed in Leeds in 1976. John King Lead vocals. He's a Jon, just like me. Andy Gill, fantastic Andy Gill, electric guitar. Dave Allen, wonderful bass player, and Hugo Burnham, drums. So this is from bits and pieces, mainly from the BBC Culture website article. They say to understand how the band's radical sonic experimentation came about, you have to travel back to Leeds, England, in the 1970s, where four art students cemented a musical brotherhood over pints and fiery debate at the Fenton pub. Back then, John King explains, the National Front was very active, and Leeds was in this constant state of flux, both socially and politically, with old parts of the city being torn down for new development. And that was quite rife through the 70s.
Mhm.
The locals had this attitude of bloody students. We were all getting beaten up by the police at the anti-National Front protest marches. Um, he's on the members of the band are on a sort of video link with the guys writing the article. It says John holds up a council pamphlet handed out across the Leeds University campus in the late 70s, which bleakly advises people what to do in the event of the Soviet Union dropping a 1 megaton bomb in the city. It even warns that at least 100,000 locals will likely perish. Um, this is we were living with this actually in the early 80s, and even more when Reagan came in. It was really. Um, he explains as well. It was also the time when the serial killer, the Yorkshire Ripper, was active in the region. Um, Peter Sutcliffe was convicted in 1981 of murdering 13 people, attempted to kill another seven more. But John says we had female student friends who literally carried iron bars in their handbags for protection.
Mhm.
Um, all of this tension was being absorbed into our sound. Entertainment, of which this track is the second track off this album, sorry. Entertainment is a record about young people smiling and dancing in the face of disaster.
Mhm.
Um, Gang of Thor's ethos can be traced back to King and Gill's friendship as students at school. They were both down at Sevenoaks in Kent, which is in southern, but sort of down to the below and to the right of London. Um, which strengthened when they both went to university at Leeds. In the autumn of 76, these two British fine art students briefly travelled to New York City on a grant, where they spent most of their time getting drunk and hanging out at the iconic venue CBGB's.
I was just going to
Starts
say
to
it's a
make sense.
very interesting time in New York
Yeah.
City's history to be going there with all the avant-garde and the drugs and the filth and all that stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's still, still New York City hadn't been cleaned up then, so it was,
Yes.
still before the broken window policy and all that. It was still quite a dangerous and exciting play. Well,
Yeah.
still exciting, I'm sure, but dangerous then.
Yeah.
Anyways, when they returned to England, they quickly recruited fellow student Burnham for what King describes as initially sounding like a Dr. Feelgood tribute act. However, you'll like this bit. These artistic leanings developed into something more novel with the introduction of bassist Dave Allen, who introduced a jazz and funk sensibility to proceedings. We all love the meters, as well as reggae artists like Bob Marley, who we actually saw perform at Leeds University, says King. But it was important there was a bit of space in our songs so we could really build out the tension. Burnham interjects, I was greatly inspired by James Brown Band and Jamaican drummer Winston Graham in my playing. Gang of Four became this beautiful fusion of funk, reggae, rock, disco, punk, and dub. But we never wanted to sound like white guys simply trying to imitate a black sound. We were trying to create something new. King admits that a lot of the songwriting carried an alternative Marxist kind of view. I was reading The Action Image of Society on Cultural Politicization by Alfred Welliner, as you would do. No?
Of course.
And it's all about how workers are being made into commodities. British people were starting to feel like objects traded by the capitalists in charge. You can hear this feeling in my lyrics, like on Return the Gift. It's on the market, you're on the price list. The country was just a disaster in the late 70s. I wanted every lyric to be simple and not far away from the headlines in the tabloid papers. They needed to be chantable. It's all a spin on propaganda. And this is really a nice bit from Gill's widow, Catherine Mayer, who's a journalist, and she's co-founder of the UK Women's Equality Party. For Catherine, Gang 4 rejuvenated the spirits of young people in the late 70s. I use that word storytelling, she explains. Gang of Four were utterly radical and uncompromising with their stories. They made us all feel like we could change the future. As hard-edged as entertainment is and as rooted in the dysfunctional, has these incredibly energizing riffs. You can hear it and feel it, like you can 100% go outside and make the world a better place. It's campaigning music for sure. Mayer argues that Gill's murky guitar playing is central to entertainment's enduring brilliance. She says he played like someone who hated the extended, pretentious solos of prog rock guitarists. Gill's sound is a lesson in deliberate restraint. He plays in small, controlled bursts of rage, and just when you expect him to break into a solo, he withdraws into himself and holds back. She says, I used to tease him and call him Mr. Angular, as in all the reviews noted how angular his guitar playing was. She laughs. The guy writes, so when I ask King why so many contemporary artists still seem to be so inspired by entertainment, he speculates it's to do with social political parallels. In 2024, young people have got the bad end of the stick in every conceivable way. The older generation are creaming it generally, whether that's owning the best property or having the best pensions. Today, young people feel like they're being held back. Entertainment speaks to those frustrations. It's about that cursed transaction we all make when we think we're going to get something for nothing, but don't. And then we're trapped in this conundrum. There are so many parallels between 1979 and 2024. Really interesting. Well, there you go. So the lyrics, and just for fun, there's some annotations on them from the website, so I shall go through those as well. I don't necessarily agree with them, but they're quite interesting. The problem of leisure, what to do for pleasure, ideal love, a new purchase, a market of the senses, dream of the perfect life, economic circumstances, the body is good business, sell out, maintain the interest, remember Lot's wife, renounce all sin and vice, dream of the perfect life. This heaven gives me migraine. The problem of leisure, what to do for pleasure. Coercion of the senses, we are not so gullible. Our great expectations, a future for the good. Fornication makes you happy. No escape from society. Natural is not in it. Your relations are of power. We all have good intentions, but all with strings attached. Repackaged sex keeps your interest. Repackaged sex keeps your interest. 6 times. The problem of leisure, what to do for pleasure. Ideal love, a new purchase, a market of the senses. Dream of the perfect life. Economic circumstances. The body is good business. Sell out, maintain the interest. Remember Lot's wife. Renounce all sin and vice. Dream of the perfect life. This heaven gives me migraine. This heaven gives me migraine. This heaven gives me migraine.
Mm.
Yeah, so one of the writers here says Natural's Not In It, like several other songs on Entertainment, is a sardonic critique of the commodification of fundamental personal relations like love and sex under capitalism based on Marxist, situationist, and post-structuralist ideas. Much like Bon Jovi stuff. Anyway, so just some of the lines that they highlighted here. So ideal love, a new purchase. And they put in here a jarring juxtaposition aptly summed up Gang of Four's insistence that the personal is political. That's a very Marxist thing. The line equates romantic relationships with capitalism and consumerism. They may even go far to say, so I don't get of course, that deep spiritual love does not exist, that the only ideal love is buying things. Um, the second line, the body is good business, sell out, maintain interest. The human body is commodified both by the marketing of sexuality and by the transactional structure of capitalist labor, in which workers sell the work done by the body in exchange for wages. Again, it's a point of view. Remember Lot's wife. So they say that within the context of the song, the reference seems to be an exhortation to the listener. Preceding the call to renounce all sin and vice, the line urges listeners not to look back, lest they share the fate of Lot's wife and turn into a pit of soul. And the next line, our great expectations, our future for the good. Great Expectations works on a number of levels as a critique of Victorian society and as an exploration of memory and writing. However, it is perhaps more importantly a search for true identity. During the course of the novel, Pip comes to realize that his great expectations, social standing, and wealth are less important than loyalty, compassion. And obviously, natural is not in it. Even desires and urges that appear natural in origin, such as the desire to have sex, are shaped and endangered by their social and material context. In the consumer capitalist order of the spectacle, marketing and mass media play a major role in the construction of desire as depicted elsewhere in the lyrics. So John King said in Clash magazine, no, it's a natural, it's not. Nor is there a verse, a bridge, a chorus, or a key change. There's one monster R&B riff, relentless. There's some dropouts. Everyone gets a turn. The words are self-explanatory, on and on until it stops. It was a hard tune to get down, as it's all feel and drive and energy, and this is often hard to get in the studio without a crowd pushing you to it. At the right time, in the right place, it does the right thing. We've played this one a few times, and it was all there. Um, so yeah, really interesting. This I went and had a look, and there's loads of people who've done essays on this, and on the Marxist, tone within Gang of Four. Um, I think you can take whatever you want out of it, in terms of your own political point of view, but at least they're saying something and trying to, come across this thoughtful. You don't have to agree with them. I probably
Yeah.
do to an extent, but really, really thoughtful and interesting. It makes you engage as well, which is, a fantastic thing for a
Yes.
post-punk
Yes.
song to do.
Absolutely agree
Yeah,
with you. I love songs where you have to dissect and think, rather than just like, oh, my heart's broken, woe is me. Those songs have their places, but it's more fun to really, because you're writing a song, you can use it for something pretty powerful outside of just your own therapy session. And this is a really interesting way to bring, socioeconomic commentary into a really jamming rock song. So yeah, lots of fun. Loved, and I love both aspects of this song in equal measure. Like I love the fact that it made me want to dance and bop, and it had this really cool bass line with these choppy guitars. But I also really loved the subject matter and how thoughtful and interesting it was, and and the angle at which they came at it. So it was a win-win.
I will say this: if you're ever at a party and everyone has had a wee bit too much, and you put on one of these songs, particularly this one, and you see people who aren't in fully control of their limbs trying to time their dancing to this, it's hilarious. It's really, really good. And you
Yeah.
usually get at least one faller, if not a couple. Anyway, I should wrap things up. Thanks for listening to this, Andy. I'm glad you
Thank you.
enjoyed it. Folks out there, if you like this, please slap your meaty paw on the like button. Let us know. Please drop some comments. Let us know what you think about this song, about entertainment, the album, not the concept. About the concept entertainment as well, if you want. About any sort of Marxist, communes you may have lived in. That's all. I doubt it somehow. But we'd love to hear from you, all your opinions about Gang of Four. Definitely, again, the band, not the political movement. Uh, I think those four got their comeuppance eventually,
They
anyway.
did. Yeah, I think that shit got him.
But yeah, love to hear from you. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. We love um, people who support the channel, and I really appreciate all their support therein, thereof, and where to and wherefore, and onwards and upwards. That being said, thanks again so much for listening and watching and enduring. And we'll see all of you on the next episode, the Audiophiles.
See you later, comrades.